All right, so today we're diving into something a little different. We're going to be looking at software and content piracy. And we've got a bunch of videos from cybersecurity experts, and honestly, they reveal some pretty wild stuff about these free downloads that everybody's always going after. Yeah. And, a lot of people think, okay, yeah, well, piracy is illegal. But this goes way beyond that. Today, we're going to be uncovering the hidden tech risks. Even if you think you're super internet savvy, you might not realize all this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, these experts are really pulling back the curtain on what actually happens when you download a cracked game or some piece of software. It's not just a legal gray area like a lot of people think. It can be like a huge security nightmare.
Right. So let's set the scene here. I mean, we've all seen those tempting offers online for free software,
Yeah.
the latest game or whatever. But one of the things that Malware Fox points out is that something like 60% of pirated software actually comes bundled with some type of malware. So you think you're getting this free game, but you could be inviting a digital intruder right into your computer system.
Yeah, and it's not always just like some adware or something like that, which can be annoying enough. But, these crackers, the people that are actually modifying the software to get around the licensing restrictions, they often bundle in all sorts of nasty surprises. So we could be talking about spyware that's trying to, steal your passwords or credit card info, or ransomware that can lock you out of your own files until you pay up, or even more insidious stuff.
Okay, so I've heard a lot of people say that, oh, well, if it passes Virus Total, then I'm fine. Is that actually true? Is that enough?
That's a pretty common misconception, unfortunately. Virus Total is a good tool, but it's not perfect by any means. And some of these cracks are actually specifically designed to evade detection by those kinds of things. Plus, the antivirus companies, they have to prioritize, widespread threats over every single piece of, cracked software out there. So things can definitely slip through the cracks, so to speak.
So it's kind of like playing Russian roulette with your computer then.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good analogy. You might get lucky and download something that's harmless, but on the other hand, you might end up with something that can totally wreck your system.
And it seems like the malware itself is getting more and more sophisticated too. I remember back in the day, it was basic viruses and stuff. This is next level stuff that can really do some damage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One example that the PC Security Channel talked about was this malware called Agent of Steel Fox. And it was found in a cracked version of the Foxit PDF reader, which a lot of people use. And this thing is super nasty because it uses these vulnerable drivers to basically hide itself deep inside your system.
Okay, hold on. Back up for a second. What does that mean? How do these vulnerable drivers work?
Okay, so think of drivers like the bridges between your software and your hardware. So they tell your operating system how to talk to your printer or your graphics card or whatever. And what this Agent of Steel Fox does is it basically hijacks these drivers to get really deep access to your system, and it makes it super hard to remove. They're using tactics that are similar to what you'd see in state-sponsored attacks, which is pretty scary when you think about it.
Yeah, that is pretty freaky.
Yeah.
Well, that whole WMV story is just wild. I never would have thought that a legitimate system could be used like that. But what does that mean for other DRM protected content out there?
Right. It just goes to show how creative these attackers are. They're always finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities and get around security measures. And, it's definitely fascinating from a technical point of view, but it raises some serious concerns about the security of these DRM systems in general.
So it's not just about avoiding pirated content, but about realizing that even these seemingly secure systems could be compromised.
Exactly. And that's why knowing about all this stuff that these cybersecurity experts talk about is so important. It's about understanding the tactics that these attackers use so you can be more aware and you can better protect yourself.
Yeah, this is really making me think twice about downloading anything from any unofficial source.
Well, that's a good takeaway, I think.
Yeah.
And remember, even if you manage to avoid the obvious malware traps, there's still other risks lurking out there.
You're talking about those annoying pop-ups and all the unwanted software that gets installed.
Yep, those are just the tip of the iceberg. We'll get into those and some even more sneaky threats in a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about those annoying pop-ups that you mentioned. Those are often connected to what are called potentially unwanted programs, or PUPs for short. And a lot of times you think you're clicking on a legitimate download button, but you end up installing a bunch of extra software that you never wanted.
Oh yeah, I've definitely seen those. They always try to sneak in a toolbar or change your homepage. Are PUPs really a security risk? I mean, they just seem like more of an annoyance than anything else.
Well, they can be annoying, that's for sure. But some of them can actually be pretty dangerous. Like, they might track your browsing history and collect your data. And then they use that to serve you targeted ads, which could lead you to malicious websites. So it's really all about making money off of your clicks and downloads, even if it means compromising your privacy and security.
Wow, that's really sneaky. So it sounds like it's not just the cracked software itself that we need to worry about, but the whole ecosystem around it, like the websites that download links, the ads. It's like a minefield out there.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's cryptojacking, which is a whole other level of sneaky. So imagine you download like what you think is a normal file, like that intel.xm rig example that the PC security channel talked about. But hidden inside is this crypto miner. And it starts using your computer's processing power to mine cryptocurrency for someone else.
Wait, so they're like hijacking your computer to make money for themselves? That's crazy.
Well,
what does that do to your system, though?
Oh, it can really slow your computer down. Like, you might notice your fans are running all the time. Or your battery drains way faster than usual. And of course, it's costing you money too because you're using more electricity.
So not only are you risking a malware infection, but you could end up paying for someone else's crypto mining. That's like adding insult to injury.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these kinds of hidden threats, you know? You might think you're getting a free game or whatever, but the real cost could be a lot higher than you realize.
Yeah, this is starting to feel like a really complicated web of risks. Is there anything else out there that we should be on the lookout for?
I think we've covered most of the big ones. But you know there are always new threats popping up. I think the main thing to remember is that when you download stuff from untrusted sources, you're basically taking a blind leap of faith. You have no idea what you're really getting. And the consequences could be pretty serious.
Okay, so let's talk about solutions. What can people do to protect themselves in this, like, wild west of downloads?
Well, the best advice, of course, is to avoid pirated content altogether.
Yeah.
You know, support the developers, buy the legitimate software, and then you basically eliminate all of this risk.
Yeah, that's definitely the ideal situation. But I know that not everyone is going to do that. So for people who do decide to go down that road, what are some tips to help minimize the risks?
Well, the most important thing is to never disable your security software. Like, keep your antivirus, your anti-malware, your firewall all up to date.
Yeah.
And make sure they're running all the time. They might not catch everything, but they're your first line of defense.
Yeah, that seems obvious, but I bet a lot of people do disable their security software, like thinking that it's slowing them down or interfering with the crack.
Yeah, it's a common mistake, and it's a really dangerous one. Think of it this way. Would you walk around a bad neighborhood at night without any protection? Your security software is basically your armor in the digital world.
Good point. What else can people do?
Be really careful about suspicious links and any weird behavior you see. Like, if a website looks sketchy, it probably is. So avoid those tempting pop-ups or those download buttons that seem too good to be true. And always double-check the URL to make sure you're actually on the right website.
So it's all about being really careful and skeptical online.
Exactly. Don't just click on things without thinking. Take a minute to think about what you're downloading, where it's coming from, and what the potential risks might be. And remember, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Okay, so we've talked about malware, PUPs, cryptojacking, and the importance of security software and being careful online. Anything else we need to add to our knowledge arsenal?
Let's get back to that story about the WMV codec exploit for a second. You know, it really shows how attackers can even target legitimate systems and then use them for malicious purposes. And that brings us to something called system hardening.
Okay, so what is system hardening, and how does it relate to all of this?
Basically, system hardening is about taking steps to secure your computer and to make it less vulnerable to attacks. So this might involve things like keeping your operating system and your software up to date, using strong passwords, disabling any services that you don't need, and just generally implementing good security practices.
So it's like reinforcing the walls of your digital castle.
Exactly. And while it won't completely eliminate the risks of piracy, it can make it a lot harder for attackers to actually get into your system.
That makes sense. So even if you do download something from a shady source sometimes, having a well-protected system can help reduce the risk.
Definitely. It's all about having layers of protection. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about these threats and how to defend yourself, the safer you'll be in the digital world.
Okay, so we've really gone deep on this whole piracy thing.
Yeah, we've explored a lot of the risks that come with downloading pirated software and content.
And I think it's clear that it's not just about the legal stuff.
Right. It's about protecting yourself from some pretty serious digital threats.
We started with basic malware.
And we've covered everything from cryptojacking to sophisticated exploits.
And I think the big takeaway here is that downloading from those untrusted sources is like, what's a risky game?
Yeah, it really is. And it's a game where the odds are stacked against you.
But the good news is we've learned a lot from these cybersecurity experts.
Right? Knowledge is our best defense.
We know how important it is to have good security software.
And to be really careful when we're on those shady download websites.
And we've even learned about system hardening to make our computers less vulnerable.
All of this really highlights that free often comes with a hidden price tag.
Yeah, and that price could be your privacy, your financial security, or even your peace of mind.
So if you're out there listening and you're tempted by that free game or software,
just take a minute to think about what you're risking.
Is it really worth it to potentially compromise your whole digital life for something that could be full of malware or other threats?
I think the answer is pretty clear.
And if you're still not sure,
I definitely recommend checking out those YouTube channels we mentioned.
MalwareFox PC Security Channel and MyCode.
They've got tons of great information to help you stay safe online.
Because remember, knowledge is power.
The more you know about these threats, the better you can protect yourself.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about your computer like it's your home.
Okay.
You wouldn't leave your doors unlocked or invite strangers in without knowing who they are, right?
Oh, way.
Well, downloading pirated software is kind of like doing that. You're basically opening a back door to your system and letting in all sorts of potential trouble.
So be smart, be vigilant, and protect your digital security.
It's worth it.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of piracy risks.
And until next time, stay safe out there in the digital Wild West.